we just got some massive news about the Valve Index 2 headset, as well as some insane VR game news that you don't want to miss. So let's dive right into it. Now we finally got some big reports that include that the next VR headset from Valve is actually entering mass production, as well as some new hardware details and discoveries that were made about the device by digging into the Steam VR beta code. So let's break it down. Now firstly, the XR Research Institute, which is the same group that was responsible for the previous leaks around the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, now claims that Valve is ramping up production of their supply chain of its next VR headset. But that is far from all, because in a WeChat post that got quickly taken down afterwards, they also mentioned that the device is aiming to launch in the Q4 of 2025, meaning that this would be in their efforts to capitalize on that holiday shopping season. And maybe most interestingly, is that while this headset has often been referred to under the codename as Deckard or the Steam Frame, the post also mentioned that they will most likely just call it the Index 2. But the news didn't stop there, because the XR data analyst, known as Bradley Lynch, also tweeted out something crazy that they found in Valve software. And that is that they found the Deckard DV1 and DV2 models in the Steam VR beta. And to put it into context, as he mentioned himself, is that normally with Valve's hardware, these DV units are the final stage before we get the so-called PV models which consumers can buy. Now of course, we do already know quite a lot about the hardware side of things, such as the so-called Roy controllers it will be rocking, which are very similar looking to that of the Quest Pro. But also that the headset itself will be a standalone hybrid device that can play those PC VR games wirelessly, with the only downside that most price estimations are close to $1,000. But also let me know down in the comments if you would pick up an Index 2 for the holiday season, or if this price is way too high. Either way, the Valve news didn't stop there, because they released their Steam Link for other VR headsets like those of Pico and the 5 Focus too. And originally, the VR version of Steam Link was first only launched on the MetaQuest headsets. And for those unfamiliar with it, this software made it possible for your Quest to turn into a PC VR headset and play the entire Steam VR library wirelessly. And for many, it was also a great alternative for the paid virtual desktop app or the built-in Quest Link from Meta. But now, Valve has chosen to expand this feature to other headsets too, such as those of Pico and HTC, making it kind of feel like Steam is once again spreading their software, similar to what we see as SteamOS in the PC handheld market. But of course, Meta didn't sit still either. So instead, they released an update to their original Quest Link so that you can now see your PC VR games directly in your Horizon OS library. So while normally you would have to launch the Quest Link and enter the Rift Dash interface, this will now all be completely a thing of the past, making it kind of an easier and quicker way to launch your PC VR games compared to the previously mentioned Steam Link, or even the highly rated paid virtual desktop. But there is one downside, and that is that at the moment, this is only for your Meta PC VR store games, so it won't include the titles that you own on Steam in general. And in those cases, it might be worth sticking to Steam Link since this will have a lot less problems. But talking about the Quest headsets, is that we also saw the release of the Blumhouse Enhanced Cinema app. And this is fantastic for all those big horror fans out there, because unlike watching it on a big 2D screen, these movies will also have unique home environments and special effects that kind of try to take your overall experience to the next level. Although, you will have to rent these movies since they don't come free of charge. So keep that in mind. Now besides that, Meta also announced a big hardware sale for the Quest 3S headset, which can go all the way up to $70 of your entire device. But this is sadly only for a limited time, so make sure to still act on it if you're thinking of getting a Quest headset. However, before we get to the big VR game news that you don't want to miss, let's first have a quick word from the company that made this video possible. Because none other than Cat VR, who are known for creating VR treadmills that look like they come straight out of Ready Player One, are once again taking virtual reality to the next level. Because while we are normally limited by the boundary system inside our VR experiences, it is Cat VR that has created these VR treadmills that let you run and jump without any limitation. And since their most recent version, which is known as the C2 Plus Enhanced, is compatible with every VR headset that you can think of, it is also often considered as the dream upgrade for any VR user. And they even go so far that it has things like haptic feedback built into it, as well as a vehicle hub, which will make it feel even more realistic when you're racing on a track or flying through the sky. And as a cherry on top, you can also use the code VRelity for a whopping $130 off on your entire purchase. So for those who are interested, I'll leave a link in the description below. And that gets us to the VR game news, with the first big new VR game being Thief VR, The Legacy of Shadow. Now this is a complete reboot of the flat screen game that was made over a decade ago. And with it being made with the developers from Vertigo Games, that were also known for the Metro Awakening series, I think the expectations for this one are quite high. And honestly, the overall gameplay and graphics look quite polished, with the addition of some cool and unique interactions as well. And best of all, it will be releasing on Quest, PlayStation VR, as well as Steam. Which gets us to the next big VR game, and that is Star Wars Beyond Victory. Now, unlike the other previous Star Wars titles, this one is split up into 3 different parts. And firstly, the so-called adventure mode will be putting you into a narrative-driven experience in the same style as the Vader Immortal trilogy, but then with a mix of a third-person mixed reality mode and a first-person VR experience. And in your second part, known as arcade mode, you will be doing some pod racing in a similar style to Mario Kart. But keep in mind that it is sadly not possible to change your perspective into first person here. And lastly, the third playset mode completely takes place in mixed reality, and where you can place things like action figures, vehicles, and set pieces into your own room with the option to move, resize, or even pose them. Just don't forget though, that at the moment, this is a Quest 3 exclusive. And that is luckily not the case for the next title, which is known as Battlemarked. Now this is a collaboration between Demio and Dungeons & Dragons that tries to recreate that D&D feeling inside virtual reality. But the cool thing is that you can play this game with up to 4 other players and without needing a dungeon master. And since it is coming both to Quest, PlayStation VR 2 and Steam, it is also great to know that it has support for crossplay. So that means if one of your friends is playing on that new Valve Index 2, then you can still play with them together no matter what headset you have. But moving on, we have none other than Reach. Now this is probably one of the best looking new VR adventure games that I have seen in quite some time. And honestly, it looks so good that it is hard to believe that this can also run on a standalone headsets. Now made by none other than Nreams. In this title, you will be embodying the hero named Rosa, who is focused on unearthing the secrets of the underground civilization that you find yourself in. And all that, while using your powers to take down some mythical threats and creatures along the way. And this absolute crisp looking experience is also coming to all headsets including PlayStation VR 2, Quest, and Steam VR. Which gets us to a big update of the popular game known as Waltz of the Wizard. Because they are now releasing a major update for their game that comes with a bunch of new content. As well as releasing an iOS port so that you can even play it with friends that don't own a VR headset. But the cool thing is that it is also part of the Fall Fright sales, which can give you up to a 50% discount on it if you don't own it already. So I'll make sure to leave a link for that one in the description below as well. But that's not all, because besides all these games, there are also some must-play Steam VR titles that are completely free. So click on the video that you see on screen right now to make sure you don't miss out on that. And of course, stay awesome.